NOSTR is like a censorship-free social media protocol. Anyone can interact with that protocol. They can build apps. So if you like the user interface of one app versus another app, you can still interact with the protocol from any of these different platforms.
It actually bugs the crap out of me when someone's like, one Bitcoin transaction costs as much electricity as like it takes to run a house for 4 days or whatever it is, whatever the latest stat is.
I'll just dive into some of these questions here. So I want to learn more about your childhood, your upbringing, and what eventually brought you into Bitcoin and led to your views that you hold today. So the question here is, let's say that you and we hopped in a time machine and we're brought back in time and we're in high school and we're in the same high school and we're friends. At that point in time, what are your interests? What do you like to do? Like, how do you view yourself at that point in time when you're in high school?
I was a bit of an entrepreneur, so it was illegal to sell gum in school, and so I started a little gum business, a little black market gum business, where I'd like go and buy a 12-pack of gum and sell them for $0.25 each, right? So it was like maybe $1 a pack, and I'd make $2, so I'd sell the whole pack for $3, right? So I've always been entrepreneurial minded and interested in making money. But like little did I know it was more about like what we decide to call money than making it. Like going out and getting money was my initial interest, and now it's more so like going out and helping people understand what money is and like aiding in the transition, the psychological and philosophical transition, in helping people understand what money actually is, because like I don't really even think like the US dollar or the Canadian dollar is money. So going back to high school, it was I was in high school in 2008. I think I was in grade 11. So yeah, I was always interested in money, and I got into computers in high school as well. I viewed Bitcoin in the early stages as the intersection between economics and computer science, or money and computer science, which happened to be my two greatest interests. So it was just natural for me to gravitate towards it and then start learning more about it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like a lot of the people that I speak with who are very into Bitcoin now do have at least some of that inkling of entrepreneurship, as well as the inkling of just being drawn to technology. So it's interesting to hear that you have or had and have both of those.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine the invention of the internet or the invention of any revolutionary item like the printing press. It happens to attract the entrepreneurial minded because the innovation space, or the surface area on which you can innovate, is so large, right? It hasn't been touched, and we actually don't really even know the full scope of what can be built on this thing, which just like that, it gives me hope as well. Because, well, what can be built on this? I mean, just that question inspires me to go out and find out and continue looking into it.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the areas that I really want to dive into, because I know that you've been very not only active in the Bitcoin community, but even deeper, you understand the Lightning Network better than almost anyone that I know personally. So for everyone listening, could you give a just quick, simple background, like you're talking to, like a kid, to explain how the Lightning Network works and why it's important? And then later we can go into some of the interesting things that this can be used for.
I mean, at a very high level, the Lightning Network is the means through which Bitcoin becomes a medium of exchange. Like, I don't believe Bitcoin will be used in day-to-day transactions unless the Lightning Network becomes a success. So again, at a high level, the Lightning Network makes Bitcoin transactions next to free and instant. I mean, that's basically all the lay person needs to know about the Lightning Network. And then, that's what I'd tell a 6-year-old. What I'd tell like a 14-year-old or a 20-year-old is like, I would get them to imagine a bar or a situation where you have a tab, right? So you walk into a bar and you open a tab, and it's much more efficient for you to open the tab at the beginning of the night and pay the tab at the end of the night. Instead of like you buy 10 or 12 drinks in the night and you pay every single time, that's 12 transactions. And that's inefficient for you. You want to go and spend time with your friends and hang out at the table, right? You don't want to have to go and pay after every drink or after every piece of food you ordered. So the Lightning Network is a multitude of tabs, essentially. And like, let's just take one tab as an example. I walk into the bar, I open the tab. I can actually pay the bartender as many times as I want, and the bartender can actually pay me as well. So money is free to slide from me to the bartender, and then back from the bartender to me, as long as like if I open the tab for $100, we can slide $50 to the bartender, $50 back to me. At the end of the night, I pay the tab, and that's essentially the base fundamentals of how the Lightning Network works. Just imagine many tabs forming a nice fabric of these channels. They're called channels. I think that there's something like 25,000 channels on the Lightning Network now. We're an exponential increase, and that's really exciting too, because with every channel, the whole thing gets stronger.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I think a lot of people who aren't within the Bitcoin ecosystem actually criticize Bitcoin for, because they say, oh, well, the transaction fees are high, or it's slow, or you're not going to ever use Bitcoin to pay for things or medium of exchange just because of these technical limitations. And what you just explained, which I'd actually never heard that example with like the bar tab. And I think that that's actually a great way to explain it, where you don't necessarily need every single transaction in the entire world in the future to be routed through the Bitcoin network.
Right.
Those can be done on a layer 2, like the Lightning Network.
And like, it's important to understand that, Will, if you and I have a channel, we're actually just keeping track of who owes who what, just between you and I. Like, we actually don't need to talk to the Bitcoin network and broadcast our transactions, every transaction on the base chain. A, because that would be expensive, and B, because it just bloats the chain with additional data that doesn't really make sense. Like, if you and I are in an entrepreneurial engagement with one another, and we actually are. I mean, like, I work for Sazmining, so like, let's just imagine that Sazmining is paying me on the Lightning Network, and okay, I get my salary. And then I might want to buy a rig on the Lightning Network. So I'd slide some of that salary back to you. We're still only talking about one transaction, one Bitcoin transaction on chain to open that channel for like 10,000 USD, right? Then I slide some back to you. Let's say I slide 8,000 USD back to you, USD worth of Bitcoin back to you to buy 4 rigs from you. And then another salary comes in, and then that Bitcoin comes back to me. We're still only talking about one Bitcoin transaction that was on chain, and that was to open the channel. And then, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, I move on to a different company to work for someone else. Great. Everything's all fine and dandy. And we close that channel. And then at that point in time, that kind of closes our entrepreneurial engagement with one another. And meanwhile, how many transactions took place within our channel? It could be dozens, it could be hundreds, it could be thousands of transactions that took place within our channel between us. It's like, that's ultra efficient actually at that point in time. So it actually bugs the crap out of me when someone's like, one Bitcoin transaction costs as much electricity as like it takes to run a house for 4 days, or whatever it is, whatever the latest stat is. It's like, well, actually, you're ignoring so much nuance here. It's impossible to measure how many transactions actually took place within one on-chain transaction now, because of the existence of the Lightning Network. It's like we miss that detail sometimes.
Yeah. So when we're talking, and you mentioned it actually, so the growth of the Lightning Network, I think that this is something where I haven't been paying attention to it like in depth the way that you have. The updates that I've actually been getting in part are coming through your updates and the monthly updates now with the team calls. But in regards to how it's actually growing, how many more channels are being opened, do you have any stats that you can share with people who are listening to understand, okay, well, this all sounds good in theory, but what's actually happening on the Lightning Network?
Yeah, so I was off when I said 25,000 channels. I just brought up a website. It's called bitcoinvisuals.com/lightning. So there's 75,000 channels, not 25,000.
Oh, wow.
there's 17,000. That was kind of the number I was thinking of. 18,000 nodes on the Bitcoin network. There is 5,500 Bitcoin locked in the Lightning Network, so about $135 million worth of US dollars. There's,
Real quick,
those are some
actually.
good base stats. Yeah,
Yeah,
go
real
ahead.
quick, you mentioned so 18,000 nodes and then 75,000 channels. Can you just real
Yeah.
quickly define for everyone listening what a node is in simple terms and then what a channel is in simple terms?
Yeah, so a node is it's a Bitcoin full node. So every node on the Lightning Network has a complete copy of the blockchain, and it is a nexus through which Bitcoin can flow. So a node opens channels. They can open as many channels as they like, and after those channels are open, Bitcoin can flow through those channels or flow through that node. So what's the analogy here?
Well,
It's kind of like an internet service provider or an internet router in like 1991 terms,
mm,
right? Like instead of like these internet service providers letting information flow through them, these Bitcoin node runners or Lightning node runners let value flow through them.
mm.
And like the difference is that in 1991, how many internet service providers did we have? Like a couple dozen worldwide. I actually just don't know, but like it's not 17,000, right? So like the amazing thing about the Bitcoin revolution is like we all have the power to be a bank. Like that's amazing. We can increase the number of value nodes to some arbitrarily large number, and we can increase the number of nodes on the Lightning Network, value internet service providers, to some arbitrary large number, and those are both really really amazing things.
Yeah, and you're actually speaking from experience because you've been running a node for a couple of years now, right?
Yeah, about 2.5 years. Yeah.
And so, what was that process like of actually setting up a node? Because I feel like uh, it's something that's talked about a lot, but the people who uh, talk about it aren't necessarily always like they don't have that understanding that someone who's actually gone through like you and set up a node has gone through. So, can you just like real quick talk about how you set up that node? Even if you want, you could talk about like what prompted you to set it up, and then how much value has actually gone through your node since you've opened it.
Yeah, I do a number of things with my life, and so I didn't set up a node until it became ultra convenient for me to do so, ultra convenient and simple. Even though I have the technical expertise to start from scratch, I waited until, or I guess I was more so prompted to set one up after I learned about a Lightning slash Bitcoin operating system called the Umbrel or Umbrel OS. And Umbrel is a turnkey solution for creating a Bitcoin full node that also can be a Lightning node. And you just simply buy a Raspberry Pi, which is like a tiny little microcomputer. There's like more computational power jam packed into that thing than what we sent to the moon, though, that blows my mind. And
That's
now
pretty
it's like
crazy.
sitting there on my desk and it's running the Bitcoin Lightning Network, and it's a Bitcoin full node. I plugged it in, gave it power, plugged in a 1 terabyte solid state drive, downloaded the operating system, flashed it onto an SSD card, plugged that in, and then boom, it turns on. It starts synchronizing with the Bitcoin blockchain. It downloads the entire history since 2009 of the Bitcoin blockchain. It sits there on the solid state drive. Then once that's synchronized, you can start opening channels. And I started slow with that. And I recommend others who are new to Lightning also do the same thing, just to get the hang of like what does it mean to open a channel. Once I open a channel, what does it mean to send a Lightning transaction or to receive a Lightning payment? There's a lot of details there that are quite technical, and even for me, like my weak points as a technical person are in security and in networking, and those happen to be two large components with respect to running the Lightning Network, running a node on the Lightning Network. But the Umbrel does automate and make some of those details rather simple to get through.
Got it. Could you start by talking about in simple terms like what Nostr is, and then we can start just diving into it from there?
Yeah, so the best place to start with Nostr is just to simply expand that acronym. So NOSTR is an acronym. It stands for Notes and Other Things Transmitted by, Notes and Other Stuff Transmitted by Relays. And that doesn't exactly tell you what it is. So let's expand on that. Notes would be text, and other stuff could be as wide and as broad as the user wants it to be. So that could be videos, pictures, invoices, value, whatever. That's the other stuff, and they're transmitted by relays. All right, so let's take a quick step back and talk about relays for a second, and compare what NOSTR is doing to what traditional social media platforms are doing. And let's approach this from the context of censorship, because this is the way that I like to view it, and it's a hot topic right now. It has been for the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Like, I'm of the belief that we need censorship of some sort. Meaning, I don't want to go and like check out child porn. I don't want that to like be on my Twitter feed. I don't want that on my Facebook. I don't want that on my NOSTR. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, they all say, we got this. We will handle the censorship for you. We'll decide what you see. And so essentially, as an individual, I've outsourced the job of censorship to those companies. And what NOSTR says is, okay, as a relay, I'm just going to forward all information. I'm going to be information agnostic, and I'm going to let all information flow through the platform or flow through my my information channel. But the customer or the individual, the end user, gets to decide what gets onto their feed. So the role of censorship or the job of censorship is not outsourced. It's actually placed in your hands. The responsibility falls on you. Like, as a sovereign individual who decides what information they would like to consume, you get the ability and the autonomy to decide what gets onto your feed. I mean, that in a nutshell is kind of what NOSTR's doing, and then there's lots more. And like the pertinent example is that NOSTR uses similar or exact cryptography as Bitcoin, and so more or less by default, your NOSTR account is also a Bitcoin wallet, which is just wicked.
Yeah,
It means
crazy.
that it's interoperable with the Bitcoin network, and like since NOSTR came online and like really. They went from like something like 10,000 users to 500,000 users just in 2023 alone. Like,
Wow.
I on my Lightning node have seen like a massive increase, a 5 or 6 times increase in the number of payments that I've routed, which is like, okay, cool. People are actually using this platform to enable a value for value economy, and they're sharing Bitcoin all around simply because by default you can, more or less.
Yeah. So this is my understanding of it. So tell me if I'm saying anything incorrect, but
Sure.
my understanding of it is that NOSTR is like a censorship-free social media protocol. Anyone can interact with that protocol. They can build apps. So if you like the user interface of one app versus another app, you can still interact with the protocol from any of these different platforms, which is kind of crazy because if you think about it, if you're on social media today that's not done through a protocol like NOSTR, you're going to have to upload something separate to Twitter, that you're going to upload to Facebook, that you're going to upload to Instagram, versus with this protocol, what you said, notes and other stuff.
Yep.
You can just relay it or put it out through any platform, and then that's reflected on every other platform that's built around the NOSTR protocol. So not only is it censorship free, but it's also no matter what other platform comes out later that interacts with NOSTR, your posts are going to be saved across all the different platforms.
Yeah, and a couple of notes there. That's exactly correct, by the way.
Okay.
And
I'm glad, because I haven't said that out loud ever until now, and I just
wanted
to make sure that like there wasn't like a hole in my thinking.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And like, in practical terms, that means if I want to build a social media application using the NOSTR protocol, and there's 500,000 users on NOSTR or using NOSTR or who have a NOSTR account, I don't have to start my user count at 0. I get to inherit all of those NOSTR users, and by default, they can come into my platform. Like, they don't need to sign up on my app. Right, my app is automatically has a user count of 500,000 people, or whatever the current user count of NOSTR is, that's amazing.
Yeah.
that would be like, okay, if I share something on YouTube, share something from YouTube to Twitter, like that content still lives on YouTube, and then there's like a link to it from Twitter, right? Whereas with Nostr, like when I publish a piece of information, it goes to all platforms at once, or sorry, all applications at once. It would be as if Twitter was directly accessing the video rather than providing me a link to it. I know that's a nuance, but it's actually a meaningful nuance. And then what was the other thing that I was going to mention? Oh, yeah, you said it's censorship free, and like I don't necessarily like at the relay level, it is censorship free. But like relays also get the ability to decide what information flows through them, and then you as a user gets the ability to decide which relays you get information from, right? So
Mm.
you as a user have the ultimate autonomy to decide, if you want to outsource censorship, then you might want to go and select a relay that you like and trust or agree with, or that you've paid, based on some sort of arbitrary service requirements that they say they're going to give you, right? So it's not that it's free of censorship; it's that
I
it's that
see.
you have the ability, as the end user, to decide who censors you, and you can also just leave that person or leave that relay if you don't like the information that they're censoring. You might go and pick a relay that doesn't censor at all
Yeah.
and has like a zero censorship policy.
So would the equivalent be like, let's say that you go onto Twitter today and you're interacting with the protocol through Twitter, not Nostr, but just in this hypothetical, but then all of a
Yeah.
sudden Twitter like shuts down your account. It's not like you're suddenly starting from square zero again. You could just go to a different relay. But in this case, the relays can't shut you down, really.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Relays don't have the ability to influence your account whatsoever.
So that actually, I was going to ask you like how the algorithm, like how what you get displayed is actually selected. So it sounds like whatever platform or relay that you decide to interact with Nostr with, what like the equivalent of Twitter. There's one that I think is called, was it Damus?
Yeah. And like you want to be thinking Nostradamus when
Oh,
you say
okay.
Damus or
Okay,
Damus, like
Damus. Yeah.
Nostradamus the prophet. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So if you go and use Damus, for example, that's going to help curate your, your feed, so to say, versus, you could go to some other relay, other platform and interact with Nostr that way.
Yeah. So Damus is the app. And then within Damus, you can select any number of relays and those relays populate the app with information. And depending on which relays you connect to, yeah, you'll get a different feed. But like the job of the application is trying to like curate an experience, or trying to give you like, because if you just logged on or asked a relay to give me all information that's flowing through Nostr, like you would get, your application would get overloaded with information. So Damus tries to like make that a more discrete experience, by giving you only the information that you care about. And so like, how's that determined? So as a user, you've got a public key and you follow other public keys. And so when you open up Damus, you're saying, hey, relays, this list of 10 public keys, like I'm on there, Sazmining's on there, Mrugakshi, my wife, is on there. Like maybe those are the 3 public keys that I really care about. So I ask those relays to give me any and all information that they've ever published. And that's kind of what shows up in my feed.
Very interesting. Yeah. So I'm really happy that we got on there as a company with Sazmining. I'm still clearly learning about it, but it is interesting. And I mean, just playing this out like into the future, who knows what is going to end up happening with a lot of these social media platforms. Like the censorship today is, well,
It's an issue.
It is like, if you get banned from all these platforms, I mean, you're almost, I don't even know the equivalent, but you're like kind of taken offline in a way. There's one other topic that I did want to cover with you. So when I talked about earlier with the thought experiment, it was this topic of CBDCs, and we'll see wherever that goes. But real quick, before we dive into that, everyone who's listening, Keegan, aside from Sazmining, also runs a podcast. So your podcast is called the Go Full Crypto Podcast.
Yep, and don't let the name confuse you. We are a Bitcoin podcast mostly.
That got me when I first. I was like, Are you sure that this is the podcast? And then I saw, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So when we started it, we actually didn't know of like the big divide in the nomenclature of like just behind the word crypto and how much hate there was in the Bitcoin community for that word. Like, because to me, it just meant like screw the banks and I'm gonna opt out and I'm gonna live as fully and completely inside the world of cryptocurrency as I possibly can, and I'm going to not use any of the services that the traditional world of finance is providing with me. And like to me, we're actually more or less all on the same side. And I've like kind of come full circle here and realized that, oh, but like crypto can be captured regulatorily
Mm.
in a way that Bitcoin cannot. But I still kind of like the name, especially that NOSTR's come out now, and like I more so expand to go full crypto to like go full cryptography, where like cryptography is the weapon through which we fight censorship and authoritarianism and information transfer, secure information transfer over the internet. Like that's kind of what the word "go full crypto" means to me now. Anyway, that was a big aside. Back to you, Will, to
Yeah.
ask your question
Yeah,
there.
no. I just wanted to give you the chance to let everyone know about it, and I actually do like that approach as well. You know, you definitely have not only a deep understanding of Bitcoin, but you've got a really deep understanding of everything being built around Bitcoin, which I think is really valuable, and it's something that in this conversation I've already learned a lot. So that's awesome. The last topic that I wanted to run through with you is a thought experiment on CBDCs. So to start, maybe if you just want to like define what CBDCs are or how you see CBDCs, and then we can start diving into some interesting thought experiments around it. Hopefully, it doesn't get
Yeah.
too dystopian too quickly.
I'll try to keep it less dystopian because I actually do think that there are two sides or two polarities to CBDCs. CBDCs is just central bank digital currencies. So that's a digital form of money that's created and issued by some central authority, typically a central bank. They exist today, and and more countries are going to roll them out, and they're going to be a hyper efficient way at creating control structures, economic and monetary control structures around a population. That's more or less how I define them.
Yeah, I'll tell you my journey down learning about CBDCs and how my views have changed over time. So when I first heard about them, and this was also before I'd gone like fully down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. So my views have significantly changed. But when I first heard about them, I've always looked at blockchain technology as a very interesting form of technology that could be leveraged in different ways. In the early days, when you look at the internet, you knew that this was a revolutionary piece of technology, but you didn't know how this was going to influence different parts of the economy, what companies would be built. Just because something has a .com doesn't mean it's valuable. And so with blockchain technology, I was looking at it in a very similar way. And so when I learned about CBDCs and thought about it, I was like, okay, well, this could be really useful. This could be a beneficial use case of blockchain technology. And some of the examples that were given were, okay, well, you can have additional levers to pull on to have a more efficient way and a more to manage your money. And you could look at this in a lot of different ways, but one was like the obvious one was, okay, well, you can utilize this to stop terrorism, or utilize this to incentivize good behavior, or utilize this to more effectively push out programs around how money's being used, and like ensuring that money's being used for the right things. Where it took a kind of dark turn was where I started thinking, okay, well, in all these scenarios, I'm thinking about it from a benevolent leader's perspective, or someone who really wants to do what's best for their population. And I mean, as an entrepreneur, as someone who likes building companies, I think about the good sides of the technology. Oh, if we have this technology, like if we have the internet, now all of a sudden we can create a company like Amazon, or we can go and create things that can make the world a much better place, make it a lot better for you to live in. But on the flip side, what happens if you have a leader who has control over a CBDC, or a government that has control over it, and it's the most hated leader of all time? Like, I mean, Hitler is just like an obvious example. Like, what happens if you give Hitler control of a CBDC? How does he use that to control his population? And then very quickly you see, okay, well, maybe you wouldn't want a government having control of a CBDC if you're not a fan of the leader, not a fan of the policies, or you have a tyrant in the seat. So I'll pause there and hear your thoughts on all this. But that's the journey that I've gone down, where you had the interesting technology, you had the potential for all the good things to happen. And then as I was presented with the other side, I started getting scared. And right now, CBDCs, they haven't been fully rolled out, but I think that it's inevitable that these CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, are going to come to fruition. And I'm not sure what happens from there.
I do think that we get them though. Like I do think that they're gonna become a reality. So we need to figure out how to deal with that reality ahead of time, because there's going to require a lot of good thought leadership, and quite frankly, innovation to combat the restrictions. Like it's going to push a lot of things into the black market. Bitcoin probably included in many jurisdictions. I just imagine like you can no longer make payments to Kraken, period. For example, like you just can't do it, and Kraken can't make payments to you either. And if you have a Kraken account, then like, you know, here's some penalties on your CBDC account. I'm with you though, Will. Like when I first learned about CBDCs, it's like, okay, there's some potential here to allow us to build a good CBDC, like something that has the best interests of our of citizens, of the average individual, or just all individuals in mind. Like I do think it's actually possible to build a CBDC that way. I just have zero confidence that it will be built that way. Like if a government is mandated or put in charge of building a CBDC, I just don't think that they're going to build it without a backdoor, without those controls and those levers. Like I think the right proper way to build a money that everyone uses in a country is to actually build the least amount of controls and levers into it. And then I realized, well, that's just Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So like we don't need a CBDC with no controls if we already have Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. But I actually do think that fiat currency is going to stick around for quite a long time. No, sorry, not fiat currency, government issued currency. And I do think that we'll reach a state wherein the public demands that the currency is backed with Bitcoin, because that will be the thing that is that'll be people's unit of account. That'll be the thing that people think in. But you inherit your identity from the currency that you use, right? So like when I go to Mexico, I convert my Canadian dollars to pesos because my Canadian dollars are suddenly worth zero in this new geographic region. You get your identity partially from the currency that you use. And I don't think that will go away, not for quite some time, right? So I'm a little unsure as to whether or not Bitcoin, I know it dissolves a lot of borders, but does it dissolve like the actual border between the United States and Canada to the degree that we're all using Bitcoin? So is there any difference between a Canadian and an American? Yes, I think that there are some things. And like one of the things that'll be different is that, well, in Canada, we use the Canadian dollar, and in America, we use the US dollar. You know what I mean? So I still think that there's a need for us to build a monetary system to enforce our geographic, our cultural, our national identities. But I just have zero confidence that they're going to build it right.
Yeah, no, so I agree. Well, I think that's a good place to close it out.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was a fantastic conversation. Thanks for listening, folks.
And you're not going to want to miss the story of Brad going from rags to riches in this video, or the secrets of the entertainment industry from Kyle in this video. So make sure you click one of these, and I'll see you next time.
Inflation is transitory.